So, dearly beloved, I want you to just prepare our hearts and our minds to worship the Lord through His Word, and let's give our time to our speaker, Pastor Chii, right?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to thank Pastor Joe for inviting me to come and speak to you. It's been an honor to do that. Yes, as Pastor Joe said, I'm not feeling well this past week, so I'm still not completely recovered. So my voice kind of sounds a little weak this morning. But may God use my weak body to speak to you this morning. I always feel that the Filipino fellowship, your fellowship, is among all the language fellowship here, are the most youthful, energetic. The Mandarin fellowship we have very few young people, and that's why we need prayer. We need to reach the young families here in the Fremont area. I want to ask you, the sermon today is a little bit more on the darker side in the beginning. The question is when all hopes are gone. Have you ever been in a situation where you feel that there's no hope? A few years ago, I was in that kind of situation. I had been working on a PhD degree in New Testament studies, and I passed all the coursework and all the exams, and I was working on the final stage of writing my final paper, dissertation. But I was really struggling with that, and I have not been making progress, and it had been going on for actually several years. And so then one day, the school decided to evaluate my process, and they felt that I didn't really meet the criteria, so they decided to terminate my study. That's after almost 10 years of work. And so I was devastated. I felt that all these years, all the effort I put into, all the hope, my hope of becoming a seminary or a teacher in a Bible school are gone. And now I was don't know what to do. I felt really lost. All the things I have done, and I couldn't really start over again. That would take another 5 or 6 years to do, and I'm kind of getting old already. I don't have the money to do that anymore. So I was really in a kind of really hopeless situation. I didn't know what I can do. I don't even know I could find a job at the time. I think at the point that I would say that's the lowest point of my life. I lost hope at that time. Have you ever been in a situation that you feel so hopeless that you don't know what you can do? It could be a relationship problem, broken relationship, you feel that there's no hope of getting it back. Or it could be some kinds of financial problem that you debt. Or it could be a family problem, or even a health problem. Things just kept getting worse, that you don't know what to do and you lose hope. You feel like giving up. This morning I want to look at a passage in the Gospel of Luke where two people, each facing situation that feel that all hopes are gone. What did they do when they fell with no hope, hopeless? What encouragement did they get? And what can we learn from their experiences? These two people did not know each other. You'll see that in the story. Yet their stories were intertwined. Not just because it happened at the similar time and space, and not just because they all experienced the similar situation of being hopeless, but also because they share some key aspects in their experiences. And so, is there control? Or do they just relax? Okay, I'll just sit down. So, can you all hear me? Sorry, my voice is getting worse and worse. I'm going to drink some water. Can I have the next slide, please? So they share some kind of similar elements in their experiences. And one of them will be I need the next slide to show. Can you just click? No? Oh, there. Yes, thank you. One of them will be number 12. Okay? It says the duration of 12 years. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the story is actually in Luke chapter 8, and start with verse 40. And this happened when actually Jesus was ministered to people, and he was on the other side of the Sea of Galilee, and now he's returning back to the Galilee area where the most Jewish people live. And when he returned, there's a crowd, and these crowd have been, they have heard Jesus speaking to them, speaking God's word to them. They have seen Jesus healing people, and now they were there waiting for him to come back and minister to them. And so they were all expecting him. And then we see that there's a person, a man, showed up. And his name is Jairus. And this man has a great urgent need. And we'll see that in verse 42, that the urgent need is that he has a daughter. In fact, only daughter at age about 12. And she was dying. That's kind of the need that he has at that point. And she was only 12, and she experienced this life-threatening illness. 12 years old. That's really young, right? How many of you are? At least I think some kids are. Are you anywhere 12? No. Younger than 12? Okay. 13, okay. For the first century Jewish people, age 13 was the most important birthday. Maybe for us it's not. Most people for girls maybe 16th birthday, okay? But because even modern day Jewish people, they celebrate the bar mitzvah for boys and the bat mitzvah for girls on their 13th birthday. And with big party and also the ceremony that signaled their kind of entrance into adulthood. And so we feel especially sad when someone died before reaching the prime of their life. You know, I don't know if you heard of this, but 3 weeks ago, we heard the tragic news of a mass shooting in Florida. Right? We heard that, and 17 people died in that tragedy, and many of them are high school students. They were only 14, 15, 16, and 17, and they were so young, when their life was taken away from them. And they were cut short. And so this is really tragic. And here we see that a potentially very tragic situation. This young girl at age of only 12 dying. And that's the one thing that happened to this father. He has this urgent need that he needs Jesus to help. Next please. Next slide. The number 12 also happened in another story. And while Jesus on his way, and the crowd is so crowded, the crowd actually not just followed him, but I just surrounded Jesus. It was kind of hard to push against Jesus. So crowded. I don't know if you have ever been in a situation where it's so crowded before, like a pop concert, or the entrance into a baseball game, so crowded, or at Walmart, like during Black Friday or something. Okay, so crowded. That was the situation there. So crowded, and there was a woman. Okay, before we see a man, a Jairus. Now this woman showed up, and she has an illness. It's probably some kind of irregular bleeding of the uterus. The bleeding likely is prolonged and also continuous. And because it involves a woman's private part, she probably feels very uneasy telling people about that. And she's probably anemic because of the constant bleeding. The bleeding affects not only her health, but also her ability to have children. And so, because she could not have children, it's likely that she remained single all the time. And she had this illness, it says here, for how many years? For 12 years. The 12 for that girl's age, but here's for her to have suffered 12 years of this illness, and no one could heal her. 12 years, that's a long time, isn't it? If for Jairus' daughter, being 12 years old was too short, then the 12 years for this woman was too long. Can you imagine being sick for such a long time? During the 12 years, she tried many doctors, but no one could heal her. Actually, some versions in the Bible, some manuscripts said, actually added that she spent all her money on doctors. She spent everything she can so that she can get healed, but no one could. And so, can you imagine all the frustration? All the years of having hope, maybe this doctor can heal her, but no one. Every time is a disappointment, frustration. And all these times, she tried different doctors. Every time, everyone failed her. And it must be a very frustrating experience for her. Almost 10 years ago, I had a shoulder surgery. I was in a lot of pain. It was so painful that I couldn't really sleep at night because when I sleep, I feel a lot of pain. And so it lasted for almost a year. And I feel like it's so long, for 1 year to recover. But for this woman, you think about, she suffered for 12 years. And after 12 years of not able to find a cure, I'm sure she kind of lose all hope at that time. And that's her situation now. So then one of the things we see is the 12 that connect these two stories. Let's have the next slide, please. The next one that's kind of connected to is this gesture of falling down at someone, before someone, and falling. They actually approach Jesus. Both figures say Jairus. Next one, please. Next one, it says that actually I'm going to go back to the beginning of the story because I kind of skipped that one. No, sorry, not the slide. But keep going. Keep going. Too far. Go back one more. Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay. So this is the beginning of the story again. I just mentioned 12, but before actually, you can see how he approaches Jesus in a way. He's actually says about him is that he's a synagogue leader. A synagogue leader. Synagogues are the center of the Jewish society, and so he is a community leader. And he must be well respected, highly respected. And most likely he's also pretty wealthy to reach that social position, to the standing. And so that person was such a high standing, prestige person. He came to Jesus and he fell at Jesus' feet right away. Because he has this great need. He pleading with Jesus to come to his house and to heal his daughter. And this, I'm sure a lot of people, when people saw this highly respected person coming and bow down before him, they must be shocked, right? Surprised. It's like for now, there be a big shot politicians or a big company CEO, kneel down before Pastor Joe, like that, And so it's a big thing. But we can see that because he has a desperate need. Okay? He's just coming as a desperate father who loves his daughter very much. As Pastor Joe said, I have two children, a son and a daughter, and both are in college now. They are very precious to me. And as a father, I can identify with Jairus. When they were younger, when they got sick, coughing for 2 weeks or something, and not improving, I would get really nervous. I was just wondering, could it be really serious, something serious like pneumonia or even worse? I couldn't imagine how I would react if my children were facing some kind of life-threatening illness, if they were dying. I think I would probably be totally devastated. 12 years ago, my wife, Tammy, was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Right away, the doctor scheduled a surgery a few days after the diagnosis. And during those days, I was really worried, distressed, and afraid. So every day before the surgery, I would just kneel down and pray that, pray to God that cancer won't spread and the surgery will be successful. So I can see how Jared must have felt that when you feel that kind of desperation, you just do whatever you can, pleading with God. Kneel down or bow down before Him. Just ask God to have mercy and help him, help his daughter. And that's the situation for him too. Jesus was his last hope. Next, we go back to that woman's story. She has this kind of in a hopeless situation already. She went through a lot, 12 years of not finding a cure. But she heard about Jesus, and then she approached Jesus a little differently. It says here, even though she was just as desperate, or more desperate than Jairus, but she did not come in front of Jesus or openly. It says that she came up behind him, kind of in secret, okay, discreetly, so that no one would know. Why?
She's embarrassed.
She's embarrassed, yes. Maybe because of the kind of disease she has. She's embarrassed. She feels like maybe she doesn't deserve Jesus helping her. Okay? And that's a lie, because Jesus, no one is insignificant for Jesus to help. She's embarrassed, maybe she's ashamed, but also her illness has social and religious kind of impact. I talk about the physical impact and also emotional and also interrelational. But here, according to the Old Testament, if you read that in Leviticus 15, a woman bleeding during her period is considered unclean. Okay, it's religiously unclean, ceremonially unclean. And if the bleeding continues beyond the period, she remains unclean. Of course, now we don't follow it because everything, this kind of ceremony is not valid for us now. And but at that time, for them, for the Jewish people, when a person is unclean, she needs to be secluded. She could not be in social contact with other people. Okay, it was not allowed by the Old Testament law. And so it's like having a flu. Okay, you don't want the people to catch the germ. Except her illness is not contagious. Okay, but her status as an unclean person is contagious, and so she's not allowed to be around people, because that way we get people also become unclean. And so she knew this, but so she could not be around this. Remember, there's a lot of people out there, right? Everybody crowding Jesus. So she actually was not supposed to be there, because she was supposed to be secluded, from other people. But she knew the risk of being found out, but yes, she did it. Because she wanted to be healed. And so she didn't want to get people to find out. She went and behind and just say, she think if she can touch Jesus, she can be healed. And so here she did that. She did a very courageous thing. Even though it's not allowed by the Old Testament law, she did that. And when she touched the edge of Jesus' cloak, it said immediately her bleeding stopped. A miracle happened. But something happened now. She probably experienced something, but also Jesus experienced something too. So Jesus says here, "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. And Peter, one of his close disciples, was kind of confused. Because why? Because you think everybody's pressing against Jesus, right? And then Jesus said, "What do you mean by someone touch you? Everyone's touching you." Okay, that's what Peter thinks. But Jesus said here, no. Jesus explained, someone has touched me in a very special way. That when that person touched, Jesus felt that the special healing power was released from Jesus. And so Jesus is looking for someone who did that. Okay. Can I have the next one then? And so this woman, now she realized she could not hide it anymore. She could not hide her action anymore. So she comes back. But then just like she came back kind of trembling, shaking. Okay? And then she fell at his feet. That similar posture. that Jairus did not. She did that in a different way. Jairus did it in a way to plead with Jesus to come to his house, home, to heal his daughter. But this woman, she already got healed, right? She already did that. But she came kind of trembling, shaking, because she was kind of afraid. She didn't know what Jesus would do to her. Will Jesus, yell at her, for maybe humiliate her for doing something that she's not supposed to do? Or will people be mad at her for, maybe making them unclean? She was afraid. She didn't know what would happen to her. And that's why she's shaking. But in the presence of all people, she told people. She told her story, how she touched Jesus and how she had been, instantly healed. Sometimes we are afraid to tell people the problem that we are facing. We are afraid that people might look down on us if we told them our problem. We are afraid that people might make fun of us. Or worse, people might gossip around about us. So we are kind of afraid to tell people. But that doesn't help us. That just isolates us from other people. As a church, we're supposed to help each other. And we're supposed to lean on one another. Recently, I attended a Celebrate Recovery Ministry Conference, Pastor Joe. When was that? 2 or 3? A few? Maybe last month, right? And we also 2 brothers here with Casey. I went to meet Casey. And there's one person, Amos, too, right? Our church has this Celebrate Recovery Ministry at Bridges. And to help people who struggle with addictions or other compulsive behaviors, like drug addiction, alcohol addiction, sex addiction. And there's often shame attached with addiction. And so people are afraid to tell their problem. But if we don't tell, we find the addiction just get worse and worse. And so we at the conference would have the first step of total recovery from that besides to admit that we are powerless. We are powerless against this addiction of compulsive behaviors, and our life has become unmanageable. But I found that actually the very, very first step, I don't know how other people agree with me, is actually going to the meeting. Just by going to the meetings, you get the support that you need. And going to the meeting also means that you are saying that, I admit to people that I have the problem. I'm willing to tell people the struggle that I'm facing. And that's kind of these two. These 2 figures here, they were at the 12 years duration, now they're bowing down. And there's a third element that kind of bind them together. This is the next one. It's this word, believe, or faith, believe. Next, please. And so she kind of afraid, remember, she was afraid of what Jesus said to her. But Jesus here said something incredible. She said, daughter, your faith has healed you. Your faith. Jesus affirms her that she's a woman of faith. It's hard to still believe. It's very hard to still believe when all hopes are gone. Like this woman, she did all the 12 years. All the frustrating experience of not being healed by different doctors. It's hard to continue to believe. It's hard to compare with after all the years of failure. And it's just so hard to continue to hold on to the belief that things will get better, but things are not getting better for a long time. But there's something about Jesus that sparked her so that she continued to believe. She believed that if she touched Jesus, she could be healed. Perhaps because she knows that Jesus has healed many people. Now Jesus kind of affirms her that she is a woman of faith. And actually Jesus said that in front of everybody, because remember she was telling the story in front of everybody. Now Jesus, in public, he affirms her. He praised her of her faith. And so she is now restored from shame to honor. Whereas now she's honored as a woman of faith. She no longer needs to feel ashamed about herself. And Jesus asked, go in peace. For Jesus, from Jesus, this woman received healing, not just about physical healing, but the whole person, physically, emotionally, and also relationally, socially. Go in peace. Jesus said, now you have been restored completely. Because Jesus sees that she has maintained that faith after the many years of frustration. Next, please. That's just right. At the same time, the other side, while Jesus was still speaking to that woman, then a really terrible news came. Okay? Someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader, says that your daughter is dead. People were just dying, right, at the point of the verge. But now, this final verdict has come. Your daughter has died, is dead. I can't imagine how Jairus would respond at that point, No parent would want to hear that, right? No way. Oh no. It's just so painful. I mentioned about this Florida shooting a few weeks ago. I was looking at the news and seeing how some of the funeral service, the parent just, cried so painfully because of that. And that's probably what Jairus felt at this moment. The news came and he just couldn't bear it anymore. I imagine he just collapsed on the ground again and just couldn't really have any strength left. But Jesus is something very important to Jairus now. He's seeing that Jairus really at the point where all hopes are gone, right? Death is the last thing. What can be more, right? And people even said, that's it. Don't bother the teacher anymore, right? It's it. She already died. Okay, what more can be done? But Jesus here gives Jairus that still a glimpse of hope. Don't be afraid. Just believe. It's important to keep believing. Even when things say it's the end. When nature says it's the end, death is the end. When the world says it's the end, but Jesus said, just believe. Keep on believing. And she will be healed. Why is Jesus so confident? Because Jesus is more powerful than death. And we know, Christians know that, have confidence now because Jesus has risen from the dead himself. And that's the reason we can keep on believing. Because death is not the last word. But it is hard. I must say it is hard, right? Because when nature says that's the end, it's hard to quit believing, sorry. When I pray for a person who is in the last stage of cancer, and I pray for healing, I don't know if I truly believe God can still heal the person. And sometimes I'm even afraid to offer, give people a false hope that God will heal them. And what if they don't get healed? Will they lose faith in God? And so it's hard to keep believing, but it's something we do struggle. And the story of this woman and the story of Jesus encouraging Jairus to keep believing is something that we need in our struggle. I mentioned about my own story, the lowest point when I lost all hope. I thought that was the end for me. It was devastated. I don't even know if I couldn't teach anymore. I don't know if I could have a job. But God just then began to open the way for me. God led me to work part-time at a Chinese church, working with Mandarin young adult ministry. And then after 2 years, I began working full-time there. And just last year, God led me to come to Bridges to serve here. It's an incredible journey here, exciting because I always wanted to serve in a more multi-ethnic environment. And it's a great opportunity for me. I can see that God has opened the door for me. Let's do the next slide, please. And so Jairus did. He continued to hold on this hope, and he brought Jesus to his house. And when Jesus arrived, she Jesus did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James into maybe the daughter's room there, because Jesus was about to do something so astounding that he didn't want people to know. So meanwhile, people are already wailing and mourning. They're already crying because they think this daughter is dead, and this is going through their ritual of mourning for a dead person. And now Jesus said, "Stop wailing, stop crying. She's not dead or asleep." From the human perspective, from medical knowledge, she is dead. That's the end. But from God's perspective, from Jesus' power, she is only like sleeping. So Jesus corrects them. Let's do the next one, please. But then people laughed at him, think that he's just amateur. He didn't know how to assess the condition of the daughter, unless she was dead. But Jesus was there in the room, and then he took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up. My child, get up." And by Jesus' word, this daughter, maybe she already died, but now she returned, her life returned. Something really miraculous. Miraculous. And that's what Jesus did. So astounding here that Jesus did not want order them not to tell people, because it's just so crazy to tell people. It was not time yet to let people know. And you can see the story very interestingly that the woman at the end was that Jesus publicly announced her faith. Jesus said that, "Go in peace, your faith is healed." But for this one, Jesus wanted to keep everything quiet. No, don't tell people anything. There was an irony in that. Two stories, two experiences of Jesus healing share very similar things. The 12 years of duration, the posture of falling down, and the element of faith. One has kept up her faith. The other one needs to be encouraged to maintain that faith. And Jesus can heal, even when there's no hope. Let's do this one. Slide, please. How many of you heard this person, Joey Erickson Tyler? Her story is incredible. When Joni was 18 years old, she had an accident while diving into in a beach area, kind of rugged area. She misjudged the depth of the ocean and didn't know that it was kind of shallow. She dove, and then she hit a rock, and so under the water. And so she injured her neck, she fractured her neck vertebrae, and she became paralyzed from the neck down. And the accident devastated her, right? She couldn't move, everything below her body. Her dreaming life were gone at that moment. So during the 2 years of her recovery, she was really angry. She was depressed because of her condition. She thought about killing herself. She thought that was the end. And she prayed to God to heal her, to miraculously heal her. Okay, but God didn't. She lost all hopes. But then God began to instill a glimpse of hope in her. During a occupational therapy, Tada learned to paint with a brush between her teeth. Okay, and she began painting that, and she began painting really nicely. She began selling her artwork, and so she became kind of known, famous for an artist. And she also found that she can be an inspiration to many people. And she had written over 40 books to inspire, to encourage people. And she had recorded several music albums, even starred in an autobiographical movie of her life. And she had been a fervent advocate for people with disabilities. And even though she said in her autobiography, even though she didn't get healed by God, she felt like God opened the door for her to do something that is very, meaningful and impacted many people. Even when all hopes are gone, God opens the door for her. Look at the next slide, please. I think faith is a journey. Look at all these footsteps. Faith is like that. It's a journey, and we can only take one step at a time. Sometimes when we don't see the end, we kind of feel hopeless. We need to lean on each other and also trust in God. Keep believing and keep walking that journey. Believe that God is more powerful than anything problem that you're facing. Believing that Jesus cares about our conditions, and invite God to help us. Will you continue to believe even when you face some kind of trouble, problem? Even when the hopes are all gone, will you hold on and keep believing? This morning I want to encourage you to do that, because we see these two people. They experience that miraculous healing from Jesus because they continue to have faith. It's not easy, but they were able to continue believing in Jesus. Ask that God will help you, knowing that nothing is impossible with God. Let's pray. Dear Lord, Jesus, we thank you that you are more powerful than our problems. That even when all hopes are gone, you are our lasting hope. So Lord, help us to continue to have faith, to not giving up in a hopeless situation, but to believe and to experience your help. We know that you are faithful, you are merciful, and you are all-powerful. For those who are struggling, Lord, will you help them this morning, so that they can experience your power. Hear our prayer. In your name we pray. Amen.